Good afternoon. It is another edition of Coffee Break Live Update. Since I've been drinking tea a lot lately, somebody suggested maybe this should just be tea break or something like that. Anyway, I'll wait for folks to show up and then get started in on the topic of the day, topic du jour. And welcome aboard, Lou. Permission to board. I don't know if that sounds too much like Sean Connery. I'm going to start going into different characters because, you know, with the lockdown and COVID and all that kind of stuff, it's like, you know, human contact has become superfluous and virtual to the point where you have to like make up characters and talk to yourself or something like that. Good afternoon, Emmett. Amit, I might be pronouncing your name wrong. My apologies. I put on the description of this particular, episode today, initially was about nature, and it is about nature, but it's also about human nature, and it's about human experience. I am going to follow up from Tuesday's talk on the myth of power. Next Tuesday will be the myth of truth. Next Thursday will be the myth of love, okay? It's not quite as severe sounding as it might seem, but it is interesting to examine our pictures of reality and our opinions about them. I think that's very, very much in order these days, wouldn't you say? So today's topic is based predominantly on the fact that I've run into some very powerful and interesting articles. It's amazing what crops up just, out of the blue, really. A couple of things. One was the article that I found the other day about using horseshoe crab blood to test the sterility of vaccines for flu vaccines. And then the other one, which really caught my eye, and what happens is that if the vaccine isn't sterile, blood clots form. And I thought, wait a minute, this is exactly what autopsies have shown that COVID does. It creates blood clots, thousands of little blood clots, or hundreds of them in the lungs and the brain, causing death. So maybe it's a blood disease, I think, right? I start looking around and found another article that now states that the first cases of this mysterious illness actually began in 2019, strangely enough. And as controversial as that might sound, they have found that there is correlations to what's happening in far-flung places and on cruise ships that didn't come into contact with anybody who had come from Wuhan, China. All right? So how do you explain the simultaneous appearance of a transmittable virus in different parts of the world almost simultaneously? Now, this happened in, I think, the summer of 2019. I have to go back and look at the article. I will post links in the comments on this broadcast, in the comments section, for what I'm talking about here, what I'm referring to. So the science, the mainstream science, is looking and saying, well, maybe this isn't something that just came out of China. Maybe it's something that happened in sort of a domino effect around different parts of the planet. And it's not that this hasn't happened before. It happened one other time, actually more than one other time, but this example cited was the 1918-1919 Spanish flu pandemic, which killed millions, by the way. And it appeared that they discovered later on that the Samoan Islanders in the far reaches of the western South Pacific also came down with Spanish flu when they had no contact with anybody in the Western world. We have to start looking and thinking outside of our pictures of reality, our pictures of belief. And so, in a way, this leads into next Tuesday's talk about the myth of truth in a different way. But we have these blinkers. We have these even spiritual blinkers, scientific blinkers, social and cultural blinkers, and it's like this tunnel vision. It's like, well, anything that intrudes into that creates cognitive dissonance, and I'm not going to buy it because that doesn't fit my picture of reality. It doesn't fit my opinion about reality. When I'm talking about things like opinion of reality, this is based actually on metaphysical spiritual concepts. This isn't something I'm making up. So much of what we take in through the senses and through information that we acquire or is handed to us or we just absorb by default isn't really accurate or doesn't really represent accurate objective information. So if I look at the article I posted yesterday, which I said I would talk about today, and I will also put it in the comments as far as link. The thing of it is, if these things are happening in different wide-flung parts of the world, with Spanish flu, with COVID, with any of the other predecessors to this, SARS, H1N1, whatever you want to call, any one of these events has had multiple outbreaks in various parts of the globe. Not always traceable. That's the thing. How did the Samoan Islanders get it when they had no contact with anybody from outside their own island chain, their own tribal situation? So one has to say, okay, let's apply Occam's razor here, which is a scientific principle for investigative processes, which is that once you have looked at every possible piece of evidence and every possible causative factor, whatever remains has to be the truth, regardless of how you feel about it or how you've been told you should feel about it or think about it. So when we weigh things up in our experience, it has to stand a certain kind of series of tests of, in terms of veracity, certain types of truth. Is it true according to your experience? Is it true according to your perception? That's what I would call subjective truth or experiential truth. And when you're talking about situations of like, well, how in the world did the Samoan Islanders get the Spanish flu? Or how in the world did people on a cruise ship in the middle of nowhere all of a sudden show up with the evidence of the flu when they were nowhere near a port of call or nowhere, no one on their passenger list had been in Wuhan, China recently, in Hubei province? One must scratch their head and go, how is that possible? We all share a couple of things in common on this planet. One of them is the atmosphere. Now, only until recently has it been postulated by the medical authorities that this particular pathogen or pandemic, they're not sure still if it's a bacteria or a virus, is transmittable through the atmosphere. All right, and I said, it could be particles of spit or sneezing or anything like that would carry the infection and somebody could inhale it or get it through their eyes. Now they're saying maybe tiny little subparticles are floating in the air like spores on the wind, and you can get it that way. Still hasn't been proven. It's a speculation. The other thing that we share in common with the planet and with everything in this environment, the only thing left is the Earth's natural background electromagnetic radiation in the magnetic fields of the planet. Our brains are synced to that. Our biology is synced to that, okay? If you want to look up research in this, look at Dr. Jack Kruse, look at Dr. Thomas Cowan, look at Arthur Furstenberg, look at any kind of Soviet papers you can find or post-Soviet era papers from the Russian Academy of Sciences regarding the connection between biology, magnetobiology, which is an infant science, yes, but guess, it started in Eastern Europe and Russia, it didn't start here. They're looking for connection between, or commonality between environmental situations causing a virus. Okay, so the toxicity factor or exosomes, cell toxicity. But why are the cells reacting in a certain way to toxic? Toxic what? Are they picking up virus coming in, invading, attaching to itself to a cell, destroying the proteins within it? Or is it something that's happening randomly and serendipitously and synchronistically amongst disparate groups of people in disparate parts of the world? And if so, if it's not atmospheric, i.e. toxins in the environment, et cetera, maybe it has an emotional base. This is the research by Dr. Jerry Tennant about the connection between emotions. I know, what's his name, who wrote the stuff, the microbiologist, oh gosh, I can't remember his name. You'll probably remember his name. Very famous. Bruce Lipton has explored this most all of his adult life as a physician. But the whole connection between the emotional state and the body's own electromagnetic firing system, as Dr. Jerry Tennant calls our battery system, which is tuned to the Earth and to the electromagnetic fields of the planet, the natural low voltage ones. And what if those fields have been disturbed by almost a century and a half of electromagnetic radiation of an artificial kind, not Tesla-based, Edison-based, can we not then extrapolate or apply Occam's razor that if we have eliminated bat, animal, any kind of pathogen that could be transmitted between species, I'm not saying all of them are eliminated from this factor or this question, but some of them certainly can be in this case, because people on the cruise ship in the middle of the Pacific or the Atlantic or the South Atlantic didn't get it from Hubei, China. Okay, they didn't get it from there. It just happened. Then what is sprouting this explosion of toxicity, which then becomes the attacking virus or the blood disease that creates a situation, as one doctor described it in New York City, and a few others, I think, a few other doctors or surgeons, neurosurgeons, said it's like their patients had all the symptoms of somebody who had been transported from sea level to 33,000 feet on the, top of Mount Everest, or even higher, like flying in an aircraft, in a matter of minutes. That kind of deoxygenation, known as hypoxia, is unheard of. It didn't happen during the Spanish flu pandemic or H1N1 or SARS or any of those things, bird flu. This one has, it is so mutated or something that it's pointing, I think, to the fact that there is something that our biology and our emotional fields are responding to, a stimulus that's toxic. And if the toxicity is in the electromagnetic environment, which has been upset by wireless communications, microwave transmissions, just common household electricity and high tension wires going across the landscape, but especially the launching of communication satellites over the last 5-6 decades, and now the launching of ultra sophisticated high-intensity 5G transmission-based satellites. Ooh, I said that nasty word, in conjunction with viruses, into the lower ionosphere. And the ionosphere and us and the planetary magnetic fields have this symbiotic relationship. Everything in nature, everything in the biosphere, in the ecosphere, is symbiotically based. If we go against that, or if we attempt to alter that, we are doing so at our own peril, I feel. And I think this is part of the spiritual crisis that we face individually, choice-wise. What do we choose as individuals? What do we select as individuals in order to feel more congruent, more connected, more in alignment with our true spirit self, all right? If you have to choose between convenience or being able to depend or being dependent or even addicted to technology or screen time in order to be able to function in this world, then who made that decision and who asked for your consent, all right? Who did the peer review studies to make sure it was safe, not just for you, not just for me, but for honeybees, for birds, for trees, for the natural background magnetic field of the planet. So that magnetic field, by the way, protects us from deep space radiation, gamma rays and so forth, and solar activity. If that's not there, we're bye-bye. We're gone. And so is everything else. And so I don't say this out of fear. This is just science, all right? It just is. And it's a matter of making the most beneficial choices versus those that are not beneficial. That sounds a lot more palatable than good and evil, certainly. But what is helpful? What is beneficial? What works? What doesn't? Simple as that. So you have to look around and say, all right, if these cases are showing up in disparate parts of the planet at disparate times, not in contact with certain people, why in the world did this, they've detected evidence that this all started last year, long before China, then we have to stop and reasonably, critically question. And that is missing from all of the accusations and stuff flowing back and forth, being thrown back and forth, especially here on social media. And now the social media has been instructed, or working in concert with governmental bodies, health agencies, and so forth, to suppress any counter-argument or anti-counter possibility to the official script. That alone should bring everyone's antennas straight up and going, wait a minute, what is going on here? There is no open dialogue. There is no communication. There are things still being kept invisible. I did a post the other day about money, and this is, I left it where it was in terms of the quote being God telling Neil Donald Walsh, if you want to remove all of the difficulties, or a great deal of the difficulties on planet Earth as a culture, as a the world situation, eliminate money. If you want to understand why the world is the way it is, based on people's model of it, then look at how they handle money. Look at what's going on with the corporations. If all of that information of what's really going on in corporations and going on in governments were made available, were openly shown, the whole world as we know it would fall apart tomorrow. And we would build something different. We would create something to replace it. The Spirit of God, or the energy of God through Neil Donald Walsh, said, look, the biggest problem you have is privacy. The biggest problem you have is lack of visibility. If everybody knew what everybody made, what everybody's taxes were, if everybody knew what a product cost and what it was priced at to sell right on the tag, visibility guarantees responsibility and cooperation. That's the thing. As long as it's kept hidden, as long as it's kept secret, then you've got issues like we have. And, it's not just talking Swiss bank accounts and Cayman accounts, the Cayman Islands. We're talking everything across the board, visibility. Now, isn't it interesting that the biggest motto, or the catchword phrases by the biggest tech companies in the world and the biggest banks in the world is about the future is privacy? Does that really work? More secretiveness, more clandestine, more hiding, more obfuscation. Does that really work? So I'm leaving you with these questions. I'm leaving you with this because we're coming up with the astrological thing of Chiron and Mars. What action do we take on behalf of ourselves in relationship to the current situation in order to heal it? What are we carrying within us that is keeping us from knowing ourselves completely and totally as both spirit and human? So being human does not mean living in a virtuality. Being human does not mean, living your life according to algorithms. This is just as much an electromagnetic field as the stuff you can't see. It's just operating at a different frequency. All right? And that is important to recognize. It's organic electricity as opposed to non-organic or inorganic. It is organic magnetism as opposed to inorganic magnetic fields. And so we have before us now evidence showing up that maybe what everybody in, the experts are saying about COVID, chronic disease, virus, transmittable illnesses, maybe everything's wrong. Just maybe everything we know is wrong because nobody asked the right questions. This is a problem in any kind of legal work, investigative reporting, judicial work, legal trials, legal briefs. You know, if you don't ask the right questions, you will never understand or see what the actual truth of anything would be. All right? So we come back to that thing of Occam's razor, which is the first time I heard that, by the way, was in that Jodie Foster movie, Contact, which was fascinating. You know, and her statement right at the end after, you know, when you eliminate all of the possibilities, what is left has to be the truth. And her statement beyond that was, I can't prove what I experienced, but I know it happened. Right now we're at that juncture as a species. Maybe we can't prove that there's a connection between inorganic electromagnetic fields and devices and satellites and illness, you know, toxicity. Maybe we can't prove it yet. But I think given the current evidence that just showed up this week, which is very fascinating considering it's just right on the heels of that eclipse, that last lunar eclipse, we have to take it into consideration. We have to meditate with it. We have to reflect with it. And then we have to take action about it. On a personal scale, on a personal level. We don't, you know, you can go out and protest against 5G installations and all that. That's great. I'm not saying don't do that or contribute money or whatever, support whatever local cause or national cause or regional cause you want. But what about your life? What do you want to engage with, and what do you want to participate with, and are you willing to put up with compromises that you need to do that? So, you know, it comes down to your personal choice. What do you value the most? These things like social media platforms and smartphones are designed from the get-go to get you hooked, just like, you know, cocaine or heroin addict. Even those who develop them admit that. And yet, there seems to be no slowdown in people wanting to sign up for whatever, you know, get on the bandwagon. And part of me feels a bit sad about that. You know, I thought we have a bit more integrity or a bit more of a will to will something differently into its place. But that's going to take time, whether it's eliminating the money system and replacing it with something else, or eliminating unhealthy or non-beneficial technologies for beneficial ones. It's going to take time. And can we respond that quickly, you know, individually and collectively? I don't know, you know. I will just say this in closing: don't buy into the consensus reality and get your emotional body and your psychic fields all hooked up with all the fear and all the conflict and noise that's going on. Observe it if you need to or want to, and if it's useful, fine. If it's not, then ask, you know, then check out of it. Tune into a different channel. Plug into something different. Look after yourself. So basically, the Occam's razor for you is, what is it that is my truth? What is it that is beneficial and helpful for me? And once I eliminate all other possibilities, whatever remains is the truth of the direction I need to go into, what choices I need to make to support that, and how I'm going to show up on the planet to evidence it, to express it, to be it, to embody it. And that's the end of my broadcast right there. Okay, so if you have any questions and comments, I appreciate you putting them into the feed. If you have any questions about how to, not just using spiritual hygiene tools I was giving out last week, but how to do the due diligence to protect yourself in terms of technology or magnetic or electromagnetic fields, or if you'd just like to know more about organic spirituality, you know, just get in touch. And I'm sorry I didn't have time today or this week, because it's been a crazy week for other reasons around my neighborhood, in this house, to get to the Kundalini Reiki stuff. And that's going to be coming along with a few other bits, but it's going to have to be waiting another week or two until I can get that all together and presentable. So, blessings on your journey. Have a great weekend. Nothing really outstandingly crazy going on today. Let's say I'm going to take a moment to take a look at the astrological forecast for y'all over the weekend. Well, like I said, we're still waiting until the 11th for Chiron to turn retrograde and the 14th for Chiron and Mars to meet up at approximately 9 degrees of Aries. Everything else is pretty much status quo. About another degree or a degree and a half, and the nodal axis, the transiting nodal axis, will be at the galactic center. I feel something is impending, like the other shoe is going to drop. I don't know what it is yet. If I do get some inkling, I will let you know. But what I mean by that is that some kind of change, dynamic change, is in the air. And I think that's going to be significant. It's going to be significant. And could be quite amazing. So thanks for tuning in today. Appreciate it. And look forward to seeing you next Tuesday for The Myth of Truth. Have a great weekend. Blessings on your journey. Bye for now.